Hello, guys, and welcome back to Between the Ropes TV. Now, this is our weekly live show. Ray, unfortunately, isn't with us tonight. He's on a busy week with work, so you've just got myself and Yas, but we're going to be giving our full reaction to the Dmitry Bivol Zurdo Ramirez card. Now, Yas, we'll start at the bottom and give it a chance for a few people to join us. We'll start with Campbell Hatton. Now, as you know, I'm a fan of his. However, we do have to admit at the minute his limitations, and he is showing sort of minimal step-by-step improvements. I think it's fair to say. Just give us a bit of reaction to his performance and fight on Saturday.
Look, well, I think Campbell Hatton is obviously showing improvements from when he first come through and he started fighting in the matchroom shows. Obviously, it's going to be a long road of development for him, and obviously he put together a brutal body shot to get rid of the guy. And I feel like at the moment what Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, and 258 are doing with him is exactly what he needs. He needs to, just go around and just box and get some rounds, try and get rounds. Obviously, that didn't really do much for him in terms of rounds, the win that he got. But, just that experience fighting, in different territories, etc. It's only going to allow him to grow as an individual and as a fighter. He's a very young guy. He's got to build up his experience, and that will come by, fighting in all these different locations, especially if you haven't got that deep amateur pedigree like the other boxers have got. But he put together a quite a brutal shot, and I'm starting to see small improvements that are being made to his game. So fair play to him. He got the win. That's the main thing. I'd like to see him probably out early next year as well, because the main thing for him right now is just trying to keep him as active as possible. So when Matchroom have these shows in, I don't know, Italy, Spain, etc., try to get him on there. Just get him, against these low-key opponents where he could get to work and really learn his craft away from like the big spotlights.
No, 100%. I agree. I mean, he's moved his record now to 9-0 with the 3 stoppage wins, which, we're fast approaching. Ray, obviously, and you've started to slowly come around to the way of thinking of the 10-fight rule as well. But a lot of talk on social media about it being a complete mismatch. And I have to admit, I do agree, but I also think he's under the spotlight more than most fighters. So I think it's very important that he's allowed to have those confidence builders, because he's getting a lot more stick than a normal before this fight an 8-0 prospect would because of his name and family profile. So am I being a bit too lenient? Do you agree with those on social media? Was it a mismatch? Should he be allowed to have the odd little mismatch?
Well, I feel like yes, because in this game, one loss can really change the course of your career. So you've got to be very careful in the way you steer these young up and coming fighters, especially those who haven't really got that pedigree, like we said. And there's a lot of pressure riding on his name. Like you just look at the way Conor Benn's been, his progression has been very carefully mapped out. And I feel as though Campbell Hatton, he needs something of similar, because obviously well-known family name. His dad is obviously a legend in the ring. So, and it's very hard for these fighters to replicate what their dads have gone on to do. So I feel like he needs as much learning fights as possible. Obviously, yes, it was a bit of a mismatch, but you can't always get it right. There will be fights where you expect them to, give your guy the rounds, but he ends up blowing him away. And I think that's credit to his, it shows obviously he's maturing as a fighter. He's not rushing. He's not going in there looking for it. He's just putting everything is going to flow itself. So I feel as though people are being a little bit harsh in saying it was a knockover opponent and a mismatch. But you can't please them all. I mean, the main thing is he just goes back to the gym and just works. Just get back to work. Really, that's all. He just needs rounds and time in the ring. The more time in the ring, the better, and the more seasoned he'll become as a fighter.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think everybody needs to. They're very quick to almost slag fighters off who potentially do get a bit of a leg up because of the family name. But I also think it's fair to say, if any of us had aspirations of being a professional boxer, or same for any sport, isn't it? And your dad can get your foot in the door, so to speak, we would all take advantage of that, because it means better profile, better paydays, better management team, better promoters off the bat. Whereas, some fighters do have to do it the hard way. So I'm completely with you there, Yas. First comment in, Joel, great to see you on, mate. Make sure you smash that like button and get involved. Let us know what you thought of Saturday's card. We'll move on up a little bit, Yas, to Aqib Fiaz. Now, there was a little bit of conversation last week, potentially about Aqib Fiaz and Campbell Hatton fighting later next year. They're campaigning at sort of slightly different weight classes at the minute, but obviously until we get to championship weight, a few pounds here or there isn't necessarily a deal breaker. I'm a fan of Aqib Fiaz and respect to him because we all know about the tough year he's had outside of the ring with everything going on. But I thought he boxed quite well on Saturday night against a durable opponent who, came to make Fiaz's night awkward, didn't he? And one thing I love about Aqib Fiaz, when he goes through the gears, he's a joy to watch, isn't he, Yas?
Yeah, 100%. Big respect to Aqib Fiaz. Obviously, he came against an opponent who the opponent didn't come there to lay down. The opponent gave quite a good account of himself, and he's another one as well who's in that learning stage, like just getting the rounds and the fights in for his career, and he's quite popular as well. So I think I'm really happy with the way he fought. And I think his progression, hopefully now we can start to see some momentum for him. I'm not sure about that Campbell Hatton fight yet. I would say if we leave that for a little bit, that could make for a much bigger fight in maybe 18 months, 12 to 18 months or so. Let them both have a few more fights. Let that fight build as well, and for them to grow as humans and fighters as well. So yeah, but I was impressed with his win, to be honest.
No, I agree. I think it's a title fight, who knows, being English, potentially a British in 12 months' time, depending on how they both go, obviously. Obviously, Fiaz, Oldham, Hatton in Manchester, it makes sense that fight would do well at the MEN or whatever it's called now, the Manchester Arena.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we'll move on now. Those were the highlights for us British fans on Before the Bell. We got onto the main card, and Cal Yafai back. Now, he's 33. He's been out the ring for 32 months, as the commentary team felt the need to keep reiterating. He's a former world champion, but I think it's fair to say he defended his title a few times, but when he got in with truly elite opposition in terms of Chocolatito, he was found wanting, should we say. Because I don't want to knock Cal Yafai. I'm a fan of his and I've followed all of his career. But he struggled on Saturday, didn't he? Yes, he did come through, for those that are wondering, but he came through, but it was a very laboured performance, wasn't it, Yes? Do you want to just give us a little bit of a breakdown on that?
Yeah, well, listen, you literally said it how it was. Obviously, a long time out of the ring, that's never a good thing for a fighter, especially for where the stage that he's at in his career, where he's been a world champion and you're taking almost 3 years out. It's only going to affect you, really. That's never going to benefit you. And obviously, we know, yes, he had that loss. But I just feel like I really like him as a fighter, but I feel like after that performance, that guy should no way have made it that difficult. He made it so difficult for himself. And I feel like he needs to really kind of sit and think, what is he actually coming back for in this boxing game? You've been a world champion, you had a good amateur career. Like, what do you know what I mean? He needs to kind of figure out what's he actually in the game for. I was quite disappointed in the performance, to be honest. Someone of his caliber and what he's done in the game. Yes, I understand ring rust, so he was never going to be at his best, but I still expected him to get the job done quite comfortably, not take any risks, just go in there and get the cobwebs off, but he made it a lot difficult for himself. It was a bad night for both brothers, to be honest.
Well, we'll get on to Galal, obviously, but with Cal, I agree with you, and, there was talk, is he here for the payday? Has he been out for 32 months, got that itch and thought, can I have one last go at it? He has talked about world titles, in fairness, last week. So I'd like to think, and especially with what we know about Cal Yafai throughout his career, he's always pushed for greatness. So I would like to think that it is a genuine sort of scenario and he's come back for the right reasons. But there's got to be some credit, I do think, as much as the performance was slightly underwhelming. There is some credit. I thought Rob McCracken cornered him really well. You could hear him very vocal. Obviously, a lot easier in that sort of setting in Abu Dhabi where it's not, Ray will say like boxing in a library, which always makes me laugh, but it's definitely a very different atmosphere. So you could hear the corner work, which I'm a fan of. It took us back to almost lockdown shows, didn't it? Behind closed doors. But I also respect Cal Yafai because those first 3 rounds obviously got put down in the first. The next 2 rounds he definitely lost, and he looked lost at sea, didn't he? For being painfully honest. But I respect how he grew back into it, and as the fight wore on, for me, he definitely took control. And there was no question for me. I know there was a bit of talk on different channels and social media as if maybe it was a draw. Maybe the opponent nicked it by one. But for me, the right call was made on the night Cal Yafai got the win. But do you respect that about it, or are you just thinking Cal hang the gloves up?
I respect it, of course, because you know what a loss does. We know what a loss can do to a fighter. Mentally, physically, you know what it can do. And obviously, he had so much time out of the ring. So you start to your mind start to spiral and all that kind of stuff. Am I really that guy? He's 33 years old, so he's more, especially in them lighter divisions, you're more closer to the end of your career than you are in your prime. And we don't know what that loss has done to him mentally and physically. So obviously I respect it a lot. He got put down, he came up, and obviously for me as well, as the fight wore on, after the knockdowns, he done enough to win the fight. It wasn't a 10 out of 10 performance, but he got the win for sure for me. So I would agree, to be honest.
No, perfect. And then you sort of briefly touched on it there. We move on to Galal Yafai now. Again, we've all made no secret on this channel, I think, as for most of the boxing world, very excited about Galal Yafai and moving at a very, very fast rate of knots. Not quite Lomachenko level, but certainly not very far behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And he fought Rodriguez on Saturday, and he won. I think it was the right call, but it was a split decision win, and his first bad performance, I want to say yes. Am I being harsh, or what do you think?
Nah, when he's had his first two fights, we saw what he done. So of course, compared to the first two fights, this was obviously his worst performance of his career so far. But I don't really take much away from it. I just feel as though him being the Olympic gold medalist, etc. Of course, you're going to have that machine. We talk about that backing from Eddie Hearn and all these big companies. Once you're a gold medalist, they're going to really try and fast track you to get into those big fights. So I feel like maybe it was a fight that came two fights maybe too soon. I feel as though him being an Olympic gold medalist, it's a blessing, obviously, because you get the big opportunities, the big paydays, exposure, etc., the backing. But at the same time, it could also be a detriment to him because we saw that, maybe that fight was a bit too soon for him. And I feel like they need to kind of slow down this whole gravy train with him. I don't think that Lomachenko kind of, because, you can see they're following that Lomachenko kind of route, whereby maybe his 7th, 8th fight, he could potentially be fighting for a title, right? At the rate that they're trying to build him at. And I feel as though that's probably the wrong move for him, and that could kind of be a bit damaging to his career. I just feel like maybe they should slow it down. But everyone's allowed a bad night at the office, and that was his bad night at the office. And I feel like he'll definitely come back and rectify those errors and put in a dominant performance in his next fight, I'd hope.
100%. I mean, slightly controversial. And people will say don't go over old ground. He did get the win. What would your thoughts on a rematch be? Because to be honest, when you look at the depth, obviously the flyweight division and stuff, last week there was talk about a world title fight in a couple of fights. There was talk about the Tommy Frank, Jay Harris winner as and when that gets announced as one of the worst kept secrets in boxing. Now it's a bit backwards, isn't it? Because they've obviously pursued the WBC title route with the fights he's had so far. I'd like to see a fighter go English, British, European, world. But I personally think a rematch wouldn't be bad, but I'd like to see him face the Tommy Frank versus Jay Harris winner first. And let's get it right. Jay Harris or Tommy Frank, they cause Galal Yafai problems, don't they?
100%. I would agree. I wouldn't mind seeing him running it back with the guy that just fought over the weekend, probably back in the UK.
Would you go straight into it, yes?
That's
my thinking. I'd have a 2-fight plan for Galal Yafai, and I'd go Tommy Frank, Jay Harris winner, provided he comes through that, which is by no means, an easy night's work for him. If he comes through, I'd rematch Rodriguez.
I mean, that's not a bad plan. I feel like you could look at it either way. I feel like he could go on that way, and then if he was to get the win, then what does that say for him? Then he could say, look, let me deal with that guy. Yeah, I know I had a bad performance. Let me put that one right. let me put my wrongs right. So either I feel like either plan is suitable. I would be happy with either, to be honest. And then obviously from there he would build off. And I agree with you too. I think it would be nice if we saw these fighters go for the traditional route of, you know, British, European, etc. Because it ticks boxes for them as well, where, you know, they get them the rounds in, they get that confidence as well that they've done it at this level, rather than it being such a huge mountain climbed in such a short space of time. Then that could also be quite detrimental to them as well.
No, 100%, mate, 100%. We move on up now. We're into world title fight territory. Obviously, Zelfa Barrett got the call, 5 weeks' notice to take on Rakhimov. And I'll be honest, mate, I'm absolutely devastated still, because for those that didn't see it, Zelfa Barrett was comfortably winning, got a knockdown early, was well ahead on the scorecards. And was it the 9th round, yes? I think it was the
9th round.
I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, because Rakhimov always looked dangerous. But I sound stupid here, but without saying it came out of nowhere, it kind of did come out of nowhere, didn't it? Rakhimov caught him. There's talk of a Zelfa Barrett injury, but, you know, he got the second knockdown. And to be fair to Pat Barrett, an excellent cornerman, put the towel in anyway. Just devastation for Zelfa Barrett, and probably Eddie Hearn as well, because he was probably smelling out a pound note, wasn't he, a Cordina Barrett UK fight early next year. Yes. Just talk to me a little bit about Zelfa Barrett.
Oh, I'm so gutted for Zelfa Barrett, man. Like, you know, he got the call up. You know, he had the short camp, etc., and he boxed very well for me, to be honest. He put in a very good performance, and he did not do himself any embarrassment or any shame in that fight. Even though the way the fight ended, he boxed very well, and he will be back. I feel like for Zelfa Barrett, his style of fighting, where you're moving so much, I just feel like that, as the fight wore on, it kind of, you know, the fatigue builds in, concentration starts to slip. And obviously, I just feel like that is what let him down. And obviously, he had the good, and we saw that as well, because as the rounds went on, he started to have a less sting in his shots. Like, they weren't really, do you know what I mean? Whereas the first few rounds, they were more concussive, more damaging to Rakhimov. And you saw Rakhimov was kind of, you know, hesitant to come forward. But as the rounds went on, we saw Zelfa Barrett. Obviously, his style is always going to kind of let you down as a fighter if you don't get them out of there, because you're tiring yourself out by moving around so much and doing all that explosive work. It takes our energy out of you. And obviously, when you're missing and you're not landing clean enough to hit them, that is also mentally draining as well as physically draining. So I feel as though that is what let Zelfa Barrett down. And also, I'm not sure as well, because I'm not sure if it was a shot or if it was an injury that caused it. Like his leg, because his legs were gone, and obviously once the legs were gone, we saw Rakhimov, you know, start to pick off his shots and all that. And we know Rakhimov is a head hunter. He likes to hunt for the head, and obviously he got the win. But you know, that sets up for the Joe Cordina fight. But Zelfa Barrett, 100%, he'll be back.
I was just about to say, yeah, what he did show is that he belongs at world level, and you can't take that away from him. I think what it also showed was, if you're fast and mobile, you've got the beating of Rakhimov, because Rakhimov, in fairness, he was very impressive. However, I think he looked quite one-dimensional. And as soon as somebody was mobile and boxing off the back foot, like Zelfa was particularly early, Rakhimov had no answers. And I know he's got the great Freddie Roach in his corner, but he had no answer for it at all, did he, As?
Nah. We saw him, like, Zelfa Barrett was winning that fight quite comfortably for me. He was doing exactly the right thing. I mean, I would have liked to see how the fight would have gone if he, you know, got off his bike a little bit and just jabbed. You know, he was a bigger guy in there. Zelfa Barrett, he had the size advantage. Just jab. Obviously, as the rounds started to pick up, maybe just mix it up, jab, time up, see how that would have gone. But you know, you can't really change a dog never changes his stripes. So he fought the way he fought, and to be fair to him, he went out swinging. When he saw that he had nothing left, he stood and he stood his ground. He traded. So fair play to him, and he definitely will be back. And look, I feel like Eddie Hearn is obviously done enough to impress Eddie Hearn enough for Eddie Hearn to keep him on the books and give him more opportunities. So fair play to him.
No, 100%. I think it was one of those fights that we see a few of, but not too many, where someone's stock almost has gone up in defeat, which I'm very happy for Zelfa and Pat Barrett as well. In fairness, they both deserve some good fortune and some real promotion behind them, which they're getting. Seems like they'll continue getting. So we move on to the chief support now. Chantel Cameron, Jessica McCaskill for the undisputed titles at 140. Now, a lot was made of this. Obviously, Jessica McCaskill's last opponent basically asked her management to throw the towel in because she wanted to go home and see her kids, which is never nice to see a fighter do that. At the same time, it's equally impressive for McCaskill. She's undisputed at 147. So this was a real fight. And for me, it was better than what the final of the tournament was supposed to be, Chantel Cameron and Kaylee Reese. Obviously, we know Reese is overcoming medical issues, and Cameron did say post-fight, I will fight Reese as and when. But for me, this had the potential to steal the show. I really believed that. And it didn't quite catch light, did it? I think particularly the fight was almost backwards for me. Whether I'm being harsh or not, yes, just tell me. But I feel like McCaskill just wasn't at the races the first 4 or 5 rounds. She just seemed like she'd gone past her peak and just wasn't with it. But then it was like the 6th round started and then she switched on and came into it. And to be fair, the state of Cameron's face at the end of it, she knew she'd been in a fight, but she did win and she is now, dreams come true. She's the undisputed champion. What were your thoughts on the fight, mate?
My thoughts on the fight were the fight in itself underperformed. I feel as though Cameron, even though, like you said, her face obviously showed that she'd been in a fight, I feel like even she was probably expecting it to be a bit more competitive than that. And she would have probably been a bit disappointed because, yes, McCaskill did start to pick up from the mid rounds towards the end. But Cameron, I just feel like from early on, McCaskill weren't really there. I don't know if her mind was there or maybe she's, who knows, she's maybe battling demons, etc. We know how lonely boxing is as a sport. Obviously, we saw her come out, I think, in the first round, and she really tried to stick it on Cameron for me. But I just feel like that shot that she caught her with just kind of put her back in her shell. And we saw it was a bit of a strange performance because McCaskill was like swinging and she was kind of like looking to the ground. And it's like, I don't know. So the fight did underperform in that aspect. But Chantel Cameron, obviously, she would have obviously wanted to make it more of an exciting win. And obviously do it in an exciting style and exciting fashion to obviously secure maybe that rematch against Katie Taylor if the Serrano fight cannot happen at Croke Park, which I think would obviously be the next logical fight for them because undisputed versus undisputed, it won't be. I still think Katie Taylor would get the win, but that would make for a good fight at Croke Park.
No, 100%. I'd love to see it. I mean, I know post-fight Cameron talked about possibly fighting McCaskill again at 147. I would understand the historical and legacy point for Cameron, but I've got to be honest, it's not a fight I'd necessarily be interested in seeing for any other reason. But I will just say, shout out to Chantel Cameron because we've seen before and she talks a lot about just wanting to have a fight. And she enjoys that side of it, but she boxed a really disciplined performance. She stuck to the game plan. And even when McCaskill switched on, she completely resisted the urge to engage, didn't she, Ash? That for me was really impressive. And again, excellent corner work from Jamie Moore.
Yeah, 100%. Jamie Moore, people say that he should have 2 undisputed champions. And the work that he's done with his fighters over recent times has been amazing. I was impressed with that as well. She boxed a really mature and disciplined fight. She didn't get sucked into when she knew she was ahead. This fight is mine. It's like, if I lose it, I've got myself to blame. The way that she won, that was her kind of mindset. And she kept switched on. She boxed well, and she done what she had to do, and she got the win.
No, totally agree, mate. It was brilliant. Lastly, we'll move on to the main event. And just wow for me. Dmitry Bivol, I mean, he's got to be, I did a social media post and nobody disagrees. He has got to be fighter of the year. Beat Canelo in May. And yes, a lot of talk about it's not at Canelo's weight. But Canelo went up voluntarily and, dared to be great is the sort of expression that's getting thrown about. And Bivol handled him quite comfortably. Then he's gone into the Ramirez fight. And when you look at, obviously, there was the talk of the Buatsi fight. That couldn't be made because obviously the WBA ordered Ramirez as mandatory, which fair enough. He's fought the eliminators. He's got power. He's 44-0. It is a padded record, but he's a unit of a man, isn't he, Ramirez at 175? How he ever made super middleweight, God only knows. But Dmitry Bivol, for me, just fought the perfect fight. I loved how he was, as we see when an orthodox and southpaw mix, feet clash, but I know people will say it's a little bit dirty and a bit spoiler, but I loved how Bivol was deliberately treading on Ramirez's toes every time he looked like he was about to start trying to, unload and engage. It was just the perfect performance for me, yes. Am I getting hyped up about Bivol, or are you joining me?
Listen, Bivol, he's 100% for me at the moment. He's fight of the year for this year. Like the way he's just gone from strength to strength. Of recent times, he beat Canelo. He come out. He beat Ramirez. He's talking about wanting to become undisputed, and I believe him. He's a proper real fighter. He's chasing greatness. He knows, like he can go anywhere he wants right now. He could maybe go for that Canelo rematch and get a massive payday, and that better be a rematch. I mean, there better be a fight if Beterbiev gets through yard in January, whenever that's going to be. That sets up for a massive fight. Two undefeated Russian fighters. One's a boxer, one's a tactician, and the other one he destroys you, gets you out of there. Both undefeated. Bivol right now, he's in the peak of his powers. He's 31 years old. He's in really high confidence and he's in excellent form. Beterbiev, again, good fighter, undefeated, but I mean, he's turning 38 in January, so could that be a telling factor of how this fight plays out? And he's also coming off an injury, right? So he was supposed to, I think he was injured. That's why the yard fight got pushed back, right? So exactly. So there's talk of him coming off an injury, almost 38 years old. How would this play out? I'm backing Bivol. I just feel like he's just too good of a boxer, and I feel like he won't get sucked in. Bivol makes you fight at his pace. He's very good at doing that, and I feel like that's where he'll win the fight.
No, 100%. Chris has joined us. Chris, thank you for joining us, mate. That's what we were just saying, obviously, just before you come on. He's got to be fighter of the year, and for the exact same reasons that you said, in fairness to you, mate. Just in your comment there, Yas, Ray and I have both been picking Beterbiev to beat Bivol. I hear about the age. I genuinely appreciate, yes, he's coming off an injury, but it's not a major injury. And he's had a few wars recently, but when you look at his record for a coming 38-year-old, it's not quite the hard career as compared to a 38-year-old Derek Chisora, say. And for me, the one area where Beterbiev can potentially equalise the boxing ability is power. Let's not forget, we've not seen a knockout from Dmitry Bivol since 2018 against Sullivan Barrera, I believe. Which, yes, it was impressive, and yes, there's been more inactivity through the pandemic and moving on, but he's still not knocked out any fighters in 4 years. Beterbiev, on the other hand, is a complete monster. I was 70-30 Beterbiev will win. I'll be honest, after Saturday, I'm probably more moving to 60-40, 55-45, but Beterbiev, I just think he's a machine. I think he'll obliterate Anthony Yard. I've said it on the channel before. And then that is the fight. It's got to be made because there's this long queue forming now as well. Light heavy. You've got Callum Smith, very well ranked. The WBC mandatory for Beterbiev. You've got Buatsi, very well ranked. Obviously WBA and IBF. Now he'd have to wait for the WBA because Ramirez has just took that shot. But who knows what's going to happen. Are you, at the minute, Yas, you've got 1 and 2, Bivol, Beterbiev. However you split it, it's undeniable they're 1 and 2. Can you see a Callum Smith or a Buatsi or even an Anthony Yard upsetting the apple cart?
If anyone out of them is to cause an upset for me, is Callum Smith. I think the other two, Buatsi and Yard, they're UK lads, so yeah, support them or whatever, but they haven't done enough for me to say that they're going to come in and cause that. No, I just feel like they're not ready for Bivol and Beterbiev. They're on a different zone. Whereas Smith, he's big at the weight as well. He carries big power. He gets people out of there, and we see obviously he's been working with Buddy McGirt recently, and I'm really liking the improvements and the changes that Buddy McGirt's made to him. So I feel like if anyone out of them three is to come in and spoil it and cause an upset, it'd probably be Callum Smith, to be honest.
100%, mate. I totally agree with you. Unless you've got anything else, Yas, we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, We've got a couple of comments in finally. It's been a quiet one tonight. Davey, pleasure to have you, mate. Just jumped on to leave a like tonight, lads. Can't stay on, but thought I'd leave a little comment in for you. Watch it live tomorrow and give you a proper comment. I'll look forward to those comments, Davey. I do enjoy interacting with you, mate, in them. So, yeah, looking forward to that. Chris Smith, family of popular in boxing. They absolutely are, and they deserve, to have 4 brothers all go into the same sport and all achieve at least, British, European level success. It's incredible, to be fair, nothing short of it. And as much as I'm not the biggest fan of him, credit to Joe Gallagher as well for making it happen. But we'll wrap it up there. Guys, it is a manic week this week. We've had a few busy ones and then followed by a quiet one. But we have got just so much content coming this week. I've just seen this comment which has thrown me off. Bivol's world class. I have an obsession with him like Josh does with Scotney. Well, Chris, I suppose we could stay on for a little bit and just talk a little bit about how good Ellie Scotney is. I'm joking. We will be wrapping it up there, but we've got Mayweather Deji content, Ricky Hatton content coming, Sonny Edwards, obviously the Sky Card headlined by Jonas. So much coming up this week, guys. So stay tuned and, join us on the next one.